Welcome to Badass Clinicians podcast, hosted by your truly, Dr. Natty Badass. Now let's get to the show.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Badass Clinician podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Natty. Today we have an incredible guest on here. Most of you guys already know who he is. I've been following him, and we got an opportunity to host one of his courses in New Jersey in November. So this is the best time to get him on and just hear his story. So, hey, without further ado, welcome to the show, Zac. And it's Zac Cupples. Sorry, I'm messing it up. I'm starstruck as well at the same time. So, hey, man, welcome to the show.
Natty, it's an honor and pleasure to be here. It's nice to finally put a face to the email. So it's been great, man. I'm excited for this one.
Great. I'm so excited to have you. I've been practicing for 5 years, and as I'm like looking for con eds and everything else, and even like mentorship, your name is top 5 that comes up. And I'm just happy to be able to have this kind of conversation with you, learn a little bit about you, and also give you the platform to just really share your story, man, because I think it's incredible what you're doing.
Well, that means a lot, man. There's a lot of good clinicians out there and physical therapists. So to be in the top 5 for you, Natty, is pretty cool. So thank you.
Great. So let's get into it, man. Let's tell us your journey. How do you end up becoming a PT, and how do you get to where you are right now?
Yeah, so it was kind of happenstance. I was a lifelong athlete. I did cross country and track growing up. Did that in college as well. And I ended up falling in love with the weight room more because I was kind of mediocre, and I was like, okay, I'm running as much as I can. What else can I do? So then I started lifting, and that was like so much fun. Started getting into nutrition. And I'm like, this is really cool. How can I help other people, improve their performance and fitness as well doing this? So I initially looked into chiropractic because my old cross country and track coach in high school was a chiro. I shadowed him, didn't really like it. And so then I'm like, crap, well, what's the next step? And I'm like, oh, I didn't know much about PT. I'm like, well, let's check this out. It's kind of like a trainer, but they make more money. Sweet. So I observed some PT at my local hometown and worked for a clinic. And I just kind of fell in love with it. It's like, wow, this is movement, just working with a lot of different patients. And I was like, man, yeah, this is it. And then my decision was really solidified about going into outpatient specifically when I did an internship with Bill Hartman. He worked at IU Health Occupational Services at the time, and then was doing IFAST, his gym, part-time in Indianapolis. And that's when I knew I wanted to be in this field. And then just from there, the talent pool in both physical therapy and training is very high. And I'm someone who, one of my character flaws maybe is I never feel good enough. I've been working on it though. And so I spent the bulk of my beginning career accumulating even more debt on top of PT school, just learning as much as I possibly could. I mean, I've probably taken close to 100 Con Ed courses over my 10, 11-year career. And I wanted to help patients. I wanted to get better. I wanted to be one of the tops. That morphed into me working a wide variety of things, in areas ranging from professional basketball. I worked in the NBA for about a year and a half, working at a physician-owned practice. I did travel PT, a lot of training, and that's kind of led me to where I'm at today, which is full-time online through zaccupples.com, where I do online training, remote consultations, and mentoring for other clinicians and coaches. I teach my seminar, Human Matrix, which is basically the base phase of my model. So if you're someone who you value your clients moving well, and you want to teach them to move better, especially if there's someone who hurts in multiple areas, and you want them to be more pain-free, but you're like, where do I start? Or if you're a coach and you want to enhance your clients' movement capabilities because maybe they're not working the areas that they should be working when they're doing a squat. If they're feeling like hip flexors in back, well, that's a problem. How do you fix that? You'll learn that in my seminar. So I do that full time. as well as produce content. And then I'm also part-time in clinic as well at Elevate Sports Performance and Healthcare in Las Vegas, Nevada. I work in the clinic, and then I also do all of the educational stuff for that facility as well. And it's a cash pay clinic, so I'm now diving my feet into that and learning about that side of PT as well. Wow,
that's incredible, man. And I mean, obviously you're taking on a lot. And for people who listen to this, they're like, wow, this is great. I would like to do something like that. I've seen what Zac is doing, this and that. So for the listeners that we have now, like, if you have to go back and start it all over again, right, and try to trace your step back, because I know you try so many things just like I did, what would be some of the first few steps that you would try to do that? If you have to do it over today, how would you go ahead and try to replicate this model?
Well, it's hard to say, because I think like even the failures that I've had, you learn so much from. But if I had to start all over again, and let's just assume that I could have, because I think probably one of the most impactful things was being able to intern with Bill. Let's just assume I could continue to do that. I would have chosen a PT school that was incredibly cheap. Like, you want to get as debt-free as quickly as possible, because if you're not, you're going to really struggle in this field. And you know, PT school was expensive when I went back in the Stone Age, and it's even more so now. And I mean, we were talking off air with the income of physical therapists not necessarily going up at the rate of the cost of PT school. You're seeing a lot of people leave the profession. So the better financially healthy you can be early on, it gives you more flexibility when you actually become a physical therapist. Like, you know, I spent 2 years doing travel PT as well as starting my own business, just so I could destroy my loans. And so, you know, happenstance, I would have tried to get rid of that sooner. But if you can go somewhere cheap, that's probably the first thing I would have done differently. I think the other thing that I would have done differently going into the field, I mean, I still would have taken as much continuing education as possible, because I think when you're first getting into it, you need to learn as much as you possibly can. But what I think is probably even better is I would have also done some coaching, personal training before PT school. A lot of the best PTs I know, they've interned at iFast, they've interned at Cressy's, they've interned at Mike Boyle's, you know, all of the places that we think about of like, man, who do I want to learn how to be a coach from? Because one of the biggest things we're missing as physical therapists is the ability to coach people on a broad spectrum of movements. I tweeted this the other day saying like, well, we were told in school, we're the movement experts, we know it all about movement. But the ability to coach things like a squat, a push-up was just not taught in PT school. And in my seminars, and this is not just with the PTs, but they're definitely guilty. The ability to coach a lot of fundamental movements, which is what I teach, is just not there. And I think it's because we don't learn it. And so like I had to struggle on the back end to really pick up my coaching prowess. So I would have done that before as well. And then I think the third thing I would have done differently is I would have tried to get through the Dunning-Kruger effect as quickly as possible. One of the negatives learning from Bill is because like he's just on another plane. And if you don't know following Bill Hartman, you should. You get a bit of an ego because you're like, oh, I know all this stuff. And that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. And, it took me getting fired in basketball to really like, oh, okay, this is a me problem, not someone else. And I addressed that, and it's allowed me to learn a lot better from colleagues, develop better relationships, so you can grow the whole thing instead of yourself. And then I think the last thing I would have done differently is I probably would have been I would have learned it more on the business side sooner, because that's another thing they don't really teach you in PT school. But I really think, the salary cap for the amount that we have to work is very small in PT school, especially if you're in debt. And you can be an amazing clinician but if no one knows who you are, you're not going to help that many people. So learning the skill of selling, content marketing, and things of that nature is almost critical if you're going to be, not even if you're not running your own business, but just getting referrals, interacting with the community, and making sure you're helping as many people as possible. So I would say those are the big things that I would have done differently if I had a do-over.
Wow, that's insightful, man. And I think we can really let's break that down a little bit. So I love the first point. I mean, really the second point of learning how to coach, right? Learning how to coach movement. And I would take it back another step as well. It's like, well, you need to know what it's like to be coached by a good coach, right? So you said yourself saying like, yeah, I got into weight room, then I got coached. And then because you have a good coach, it leave a really good impact on you. You're like, man, I really want to do this. It's great. I had a handful of great coaches when I was competing in weightlifting, which really got me into strength conditioning, which got me to learn even more. Like, man, I want to do this really, like, this is cool. I can do this all day. And that's the whole point, right? When you're really into something, yes, you need the financial things, but it's the passion that carry you for the first few years. And I'm just excited to host your course just because it's a movement course, a truly real movement course where you actually get to move. You get to know what it's like to be coached throughout certain moves. Because I always like to work out myself just because I need to be able to demonstrate these movements to the patients. And we can't be an expert in movement if we don't know how to move ourselves, which is, it's like no one's going to show up and say like, oh yeah, I should listen to you, right? If you're like 500 pounds and you're a weight loss coach.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So talk me through about that experience you had, like when you were getting coached. Like what was it about the coaches that you had? You're like, man, like I want to emulate this. And how is it impacting the courses that you're putting out right now?
Yeah, it's funny. Like I will echo that point, and something I advocate a lot for is one of the best teaching skills you can have is the ability to demonstrate the movement you're trying to get someone to do. So if you can't get into those positions, that's going to cap how well your clients will be able to learn from that specific teaching style. And, a lot of the beginning of my career was learning on my own. And I'm thinking like when I first got into weightlifting, it was watching the videos on Core Performance by Mark Verstegen. Like that was my workout. And I did that forever. And then when I got to iFast, like Bill would coach me through some stuff. It's like, oh, wow, that feels very different. Or like Lance Goyke, I remember he coached me on a front squat. And I was kind of strong, I thought, for myself. And I just got absolutely destroyed. And then you just get like, different experiences from that. Eric Otter's another buddy of mine. He's someone who really helped my coaching trajectory. He's a PT for the Grizzlies, among other things. And so you just pick up little things here and there. And so, yeah, I mean, if you can feel something yourself and you know what it's like to experience that particular movement, it just helps you all that much more when you have to guide someone else through it. That's partly like why I try to learn a lot of different things and why I've experienced a lot of different treatments myself, just to see what it's like on the back end. Like there's some times where I might have to refer someone if they have sleep apnea to get treated for that by like a dentist or something like that. So like I go through a sleep study because I want to know what that's like. And so that way they know what to expect. That's one reason why I got braces and all that, because that's a potential treatment. And I want to know like what that's like and what works and what doesn't. Or, I got good vision, but I wear glasses because I tried vision therapy because like sometimes I refer to that. I need to know what that's like. And so the more of those experiences you can cultivate by learning from someone else, by you going through the process, it just makes you that much more knowledgeable when you have to teach it to someone else. Bill, during my internship, taught the concept, and I think this is a jiu-jitsu concept of watch one, learn one, teach one. So you watch someone else do it, you go through that process, and then you teach someone else. And that's like really a good paradigm to operate by whenever you're trying to learn anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that, man. I think that's just hit the nail on the head. Like I remember like when I was in weightlifting, I would have like a coach from China, and we literally would communicate through it's like WhatsApp but in Chinese, and then I would send video breakdown, and we'll come back and we have to translate everything. But the whole thing was it was that he would coach me through by sending videos of what I need to work on, and then he would always emphasize on, do you feel this? And to me, this was way back, like in 2014. This is where before online coaching was really an online coaching thing. And I'm like, wow, like the whole, I love you said so many times already. It's like, hey, do you feel that? Because to me, that's the personal touch of personal training, right? Get people to feel what you need to feel. And for us as PT, we don't do enough personal stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And people come to us in pain. We should be more personal than personal trainer.
Yeah. Because when someone is hurting, they're in a vulnerable position, and in many ways, and that could be physically, psychologically, emotionally, all that. And so, the more personable you get, the more you can personalize, the more connected you can get with that person, the better the outcome is. So yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Great. I love it, man. Let's move on to the next point. I love when you point out the Dunning-Kruger effect, because I love that whole, the bell curve and everything. And it's true. And I can relate this to my personal story when I first came out of PT school, because I was doing strength conditioning before I became a PT. When I started doing some, like some exercise progression with some patient I had, we were doing like testing like 8RM, 5RM, 3RM for like all the ACL patient. And then, some other therapists, they weren't used to that. And, they would question why I was doing things, right? And me, obviously being a young clinician, I would get pretty much dismissive and I just still do it anyways, rather than being collaborative and be like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. Here's my rhyme and reason. And now looking back, it would definitely come off as arrogant during that time. I can probably alienate myself from some of my peers during that time. So let's talk about your journey with that, and how have you overcome it yourself, and what advice do you have for clinicians that are going through that right now?
Yeah, it was very similar, because a lot of my early career experiences the way I was doing things was vastly, it still is, but it is drastically different than what my colleagues are doing. But the hard thing is, when you're first starting out, is you might have knowledge, but you're lacking experience of like, well, when you see this type of patient, what do you do? So, ideally you have someone close to you who you can bounce ideas off of, who you're trying to emulate. And so, that's why I have a good relationship with Bill through my entire career, was because he was the closest thing I had to that, because we think similarly enough, but he can see things a bit differently than me because he's got the experience. At the same time, too, you develop bias when you're thinking of a certain way. And some people might be able to have a different way of looking at things that can complement some of the gaps that you inevitably develop from your bias. And so instead of thinking of the things people will say as attacking you, and sometimes they are attacking you, and that could be because of cognitive dissonance they have by what you're doing, or maybe there's some stuff that they have to work through. But you still take that feedback in, and you think about, okay, where is this coming from? What is the objective thing that I can take away from this? And then you either apply that to what you're doing, or you brush it off if it's not something that is valuable for you. And that's, I say that's not something I always did well. I think it was really until after the NBA that I was able to take that feedback a lot better. And that's just because of personal work that I did. Like you have to, the sooner you can come to the realization that the way people act towards you, whether it's a colleague who is calling you out on what you're doing, whether it's right or wrong, whether it's a patient you didn't develop good rapport with, whether it's someone who's angry talking to you, a lot of times it's not about you. In fact, 99.95% of the times it's not about you. It's about how they are responding to that situation. And so the sooner that you can step back from those environments and look at things objectively and apply that information with minimizing the emotional component, the more likely you are to pass through that. And then the more you can grow. And the other thing I would say to that is you should continue to have a beginner's mind throughout your clinical process. And I'll tell you what, it gets a lot more difficult the longer you're in it, because you're, at a certain point, you're just refining your current model as opposed to completely overhauling things. So one thing that I found useful for that is trying other experiences that maybe I'm not as good at. So like, and I want to do this a bit more, but like one example was I took a salsa dancing class, and it killed me to do it because like, I'm like, I know I'm going to suck, but it would be fun, and I need to do that. And it was actually an amazing learning experience, and it helped me as a coach. So you need to be able to put yourself into those uncomfortable situations to grow.
So we're going to see you on Dancing with the Stars soon, right?
As the first person out. Yes.
Hey, at least you made it.
You know how like in on those shows like that where they have like just the person who absolutely bombs and they have it there for comedic effect. That would probably be me.
It's the courage that it takes to do it. I'm going to be honest. I'll share this too. So my wife is half Dominican, half Puerto Rican. She's an amazing dancer, right? Salsa, everything.
Yeah.
Bachata I can do is 2 steps, right? Salsa 6 steps. Guys have to lead. You know this. So when we started dating, I was in the University of Maryland. So I decided to join the salsa club. In my head, I was like, I'm going to join this salsa club. I'm going to be a okay salsa dancer. I'm going to show up to a family event, and I'm just going to bedazzle her. Like Ben Stiller from Along Came Polly, right? And I was in it. I was like, oh my God, this is so hard. I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. I'm stepping on people, all this stuff. I stuck through it until like I graduated, and I still don't know how to salsa. So, so it's one of those things where like, man, I really should go back into it. And you're right. It's a learning curve thing. It's totally humble you. It put you into like a different zone, right? I mean, you're out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And, one of the core values we have here at the clinic is, be open-minded, always being an active learner, right? And that's one of my core values in life. It's like my goal in life is to pursue as much knowledge as possible, right? And then increase depth in the relationship of the people that I care for. And the parallel of those two things are they're both infinite. They're infinite amount of knowledge you can pursue, and you can always create a bigger depth of relationship that you have with people, right? So every morning when I meditate, I was like, all right, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to learn more. Who can I learn from? What's going on? And to me, it's just go beyond clinical. And if you can do it clinically, you can do it to life and vice versa. And then I think overall, most people that I come in contact with now that I'm doing this podcast, someone like you, the people who are active learner, they generally are happier people. And that's my observation. Like there's always like a lightness about them. I don't know if you feel any of that, but I can definitely tell because there's some people where I met in the past where they have too much pressure on themselves and life is a little bit more too serious. And I think this is why we have huge burnout rate in our field as well, where some people take it like we need to take our job seriously, but we also need to be able to laugh and have a good time with our peers, but also with the patient at the same time. And again, going back is part of the personal side of being a physical therapist.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think some of that too is when you have that beginner's mindset, you're always growing, and humans are problem solvers in one way, shape, or another. And so if you have no problems to solve because you're not growing, then I think it would be tough to feel fulfilled.
Yeah. One of my mentors mentioned this to me. It's like, it's not about not solving the problem. It's about, you're always going to be solving problem. It's about upgrading the problems that you are solving.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like, you think about the things that you are trying to learn when you're first becoming a physical therapist versus the problems you have to deal with now. Well, if you're doing good things and you're learning a lot of the fundamentals, eventually the cases that you're going to be getting are more and more difficult. And a lot of times those require more challenging solutions, and you have to look at answering the same problems differently. And a lot of times outside your field, it might be like, oh, I haven't run into this before. Who do I send to for that? Like, I think recently in mine, it's actually been screening for sleep disorders, because like most people aren't sleeping all that great. And sometimes it's pathological. And we didn't learn, we learned a lot of different screening things in physical therapy school, but I never remember talking about sleep apnea. And like that when you read the research on with sleep in particular, the language is very strong. Like, if you have a sleep disorder, there's a causal function for pain. Like, I've never seen that anywhere with anything else. It's all been correlations. So, the problems ideally are going to get more difficult and require you expanding your breadth of knowledge into domains you might not have otherwise thought.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's when you start having a collaborative effort and relationship with other physician or other professionals, right? Like we refer out all the time, because I think part of the being, I guess, competent in what you do is understand where your skill set ends, and understand where you need to refer and go somewhere else, right? I mean, we have strength conditioning in here, and we know that as soon as we get people clear, go back to sport, after that, it's their job to take them to the next level. Our job is done. And I think to me, I feel at peace with that, just because, I don't want to keep going down the rabbit hole and do more than what I'm capable of. I'd rather just stick to what I'm really good at, what we're really good at. So I love that. So the last point, I think this is going to be a big point for everybody. And the way you build your brand, and the fact that you have an online business, coaching business that is doing well, and the fact that you can get people better by not putting your hands on them and just coaching them and getting them to feel stuff, using the interwebs. That's something that I really want to get in touch with, because that's something that I feel other PTs who are looking to take down those debt that they have, that they accumulate, that's an avenue they can go into without taking so much of a risk, right? What requires an upfront investment of their own time, right? And learning from someone like you. So let's talk about that whole process. Because for me, when I first started doing podcasts, I know I have to overcome a lot of discomfort, right? There's always imposter syndrome when it comes to this. So you put out content like a daily work. So let's talk about how you start building that routine. Why is it important? Why is it important for PT to have their own brand and their own content? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah. So it goes back to, you can be an amazing clinician, but if no one knows who you are, well, it's really going to limit the number of people you're going to be helping. And so there's a lot of ways that you can build your awareness. Word of mouth is obviously one. I think that's what a lot of us rely on. But the problem is it's slow. Right? What if I just moved to Vegas two and a half years ago, right? And I didn't really know a whole lot of people when I moved here. So if I just try to do my thing and I see the occasional patient, like, for me to get a full caseload is going to take a very long time, even if you get good outcomes. So you got to look at, well, how can I put more fuel on that fire? And that's where being able to market, build your brand, etc., comes into play. And there's a lot of ways you can do it. You can do paid ads. You can do cold DMs and things like that. And on all these work, you can also produce content. And that was the route that I chose to go about it. And it wasn't initially because I was thinking in that frame. Like, I never developed an entrepreneurial, I never saw myself as an entrepreneur until it was kind of right in my face of like, this is really your only option. Because like when I was first producing content, which was my blog, I was just writing stuff to try to learn what I was learning better. And I thought, well, hey, if I summarize this stuff, maybe that'll help someone else. And it actually pushed me really far. And then it's kind of morphed into what I do now, which is teaching seminars, talking about some of the things that I've problem solved in the clinic, and everything else like that, and trying to basically simplify very complex biomechanics topics. But the thing with content is it's very rarely an overnight success. Like what people don't understand is I started blogging in 2013.
Wow.
I didn't really start. I'd see a few people here and there remotely, but I didn't really start making money, and it was a small amount until 2017. So are you willing to put in that amount of time with potentially not getting a big return on investment? And I actually saw this recently. I follow Gary Vee, who's like a
love Gary
guy.
Vee. Yep.
Yeah. But he put out something recently of like, you don't put out content expecting something in return. You almost treat it like the news, right? I'm just reporting something valuable to you, and you just continue. You have to look at it as like a labor of I'm giving more, and eventually, if you help enough people that way, folks will be compelled to return the favor to you. But you have to give things that are valuable, and ideally, that's things you learn from your own experiences, because then it makes it a little bit more real and tangible, because you can draw from stories. Like I did a post recently on, hey, this guy touched his toes with 2 exercises. Why? Well, because I actually did that. So I can talk about what happened and hypothesize why that happened. And so you can do that very early in your career. Maybe you do that in PT school. Mm-hmm. Maybe what you talk about in that time frame is, hey, I'm going through PT school and this worked for me. And then when you're a first year out, it's like, hey, I'm first year out. I'm learning this, and this, and I found this and this to be helpful for the patient type that I like. And then you just build upon it that way. And I think the most important thing, you have to recognize 2 things when you're getting into content marketing, if that's what you elect to do. The first thing I say is the first 100 of everything you do is going to be terrible. So the sooner you get through that, the better. And I mean, I'm still, I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube right now. And it's like, I'm still figuring that out. I'm still like, I'm trying to learn from other people on like, how can I best get the message across? And I think the second thing is the sooner you can be consistent with it, the better. And you just got to go with whatever your schedule is going to allow. If it's 1 YouTube video a month, that's better than no YouTube videos a month. Mm-hmm. If it's 1 Instagram reel a week, it's better than no Instagram reels a week. If it's a TikTok every 2 days, it's better than none. So it's just like any other habit that you're ingraining. And then you can build upon it from there as your schedule allows.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that, man, because you just commit to whatever you have available, right? I think most people, I'm sure everyone here have heard of, read Atomic Habits. It's all about setting up small habits that you can follow through. So that way you get that positive dopamine effect. You're like, oh, great, let me keep going. This is great, right? And, I think putting out content is one of the best things you can do for yourself. So when I put out content, I look at it as like a video journal, right? Hey, let me document how I was thinking in real time at this moment. I do it for business and I do it for, clinically, right? And then from there, like, man, I want to be able to look back and be like, whoa, all right, well, I came a long way. This is pretty good. Oh, remember I used to think that way? We still get good outcome. Why do we get good outcome? Oh, maybe because we were able to communicate really well and, we found the right fit of patient, right? So something like that. I always like to put out content based on that. And the second point I like to touch on is that you speak from your own experience, right? So no one can really discredit that. Like, hey, this guy just touched his toes because I just helped him doing that. Here's how I did it. And, content I created it's the same thing where like, oh, I started my business like this. It's cash-based. Now we scale it up to this level. Here's how I did it. Here's how I do my ACL rehab, this and that, right? And for me, it's one of those things where like I'm giving back to people that was like me 5 years ago. And I think that's the best thing we can do to keep the field going. And you know what? If you don't do it, if I don't do it, and those who are listening not doing it, then we're not really pushing the field forward, right? Someone has to do it. Someone got to take up that mantle and do it. And, and just what I would love to see, and I've been trying to get into this habit where I see, when I see PT posting content, I would just go in there and just put in fire emoji, like at least 3-4 times just to support them. Because I think we need more of that, man. There's too much negativity against one or the other. I think we need to just like big up each other. And you know what? If you don't like what they say, DM them like, hey man, why do you say that? Can we talk a little bit? Can you let me know what you're seeing? And what am I missing? Like, if we treat the internet like that, can you imagine that? Imagine where we'll be 5 years, 2 years from now as a profession.
Yeah. Ego is the enemy of progress. And unfortunately, I think with the way social is designed, it's very easy to have that. And there's less recourse if you are negative. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's, we don't have to learn as a society to invent the wheel every year. Like the reason why, you and I are talking through the internet, whereas 200 years ago we would have never met, is because the generation before us did all this stuff and then passed that on to the next generation. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, in whether it's ego, whether it's because of finances or competition or whatever, it seems like in some instances people are neglectful of doing that. Mm-hmm. When it's like, well, if we all collaborate and we just put the information out there, I think we can grow much more as a field. Like, I think where the real meat and potatoes is of anything, it's not content. That's why I love that you could get anything for free pretty much, but mm-hmm. It's the application. That's where I think the real meat and potatoes is. And if I can get someone to apply something better than I did when I was at that point in the career, then I know I'm doing the right thing and I'm advancing the profession and the world in some way, shape, or form. And that's ultimately what I want. Like that's the crux of mentoring. Like mm-hmm. how lucky am I that I had Bill Hartman as my mentor, and he basically jump-started my career by sharing me all of his mistakes. And I try to do the same thing with my students. I'm like, hey, look, I did this. I don't want you to do that when you first start, so do it this way. And that's the only way that we can grow and help more people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I love that. And just another point as far as like the listeners is looking to pick up mentor, right? As great as Instagram, reaching out via DM and all that stuff, I think the best way to get someone to support you as a mentor is for you to support them first. Just like what Gary Vee said, you want to jab, hook, right? And, some of the relationships that I have are some people who reach out to me and say, hey, can I come by? Can I do this? Can I do that? How can we get connected? I think that's the more genuine way, because that's what I used to do, right? I'm sure back in our day, you and I are a little bit older than some of the listener here. We used to just volunteer our time because we didn't have money. And all we do is like, can I just show up and clean something and learn from you? What do you need help with? Like, I think, like the younger generation, that those are something like, I have someone that dropped off a resume, literally in person. I didn't know this person. And guess what? His name's stuck in my head more than any other resume I get via email, because those personal touch really goes a long way. So, if you want to get Zac as your mentor, guess what? Sign up for his course. Show him you're interested. You got to put some skin in the game. And that's what I wanted to try to say. If you put your skin in the game, you take ownership of your opportunity, right? If you take your ownership of your life, guess what? Someone seeing that, they're like, you know what? This guy really wants it. This girl really wants it. Let me help them out. Because now I'm all in as well. If you're all in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just, it goes back to like the law of reciprocity. Like you do something for me, and I'm more apt to do something back for you in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And if you don't operate by that paradigm and you're trying to get someone to do something and not offering much value in return, well, chances are, especially for like someone who's really big, and I'm not saying I'm really big by any means, but like you look at like maybe I don't know, Elon Musk or whoever, they're not even going to be on your radar because they don't have the bandwidth for that because they're trying to do such big things. So you have to find ways to create value for the other person. And I mean, that actually goes back to the crux of content creation is like, you know, when I was first starting the blogs, I was doing this and I wasn't expecting anything to happen. But fortunately, you know, you give away enough free stuff. And I've had some people say, Zach, I'm attending your course because I feel bad. And like, you know, that's something that stuck with me. And I think about that if I want to learn something from someone or I want to meet someone or whatever, and I've actually done this to not to get referrals, but like, hey, I want to know what you do. Let me pay you for your time. So that way you can teach me that. And it's just, I think we all grow that way. And the connections we build with one another are much more organic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we have to go, but let's talk about this course. Guys, he's coming to New Jersey. It's a rare occurrence. We got him here. If you guys are interested, please come. Let's talk about the course. What can they expect from the course, and how can they find a link to sign up?
Yeah, well, it's going to be November 5th and 6th. Yes, November 5th and 6th in wonderful New Jersey. I'm stoked for it. And that's 2022. If you're listening this year, so you should sign up soon. And basically, what you can expect is, and I'm saying this because this is what people have said to me when I get my course reviews is, wow, this was actually something that I could apply right away on Monday. And I think that's the most important thing because I make sure that there's a lot of prep work on the front end so we can spend more time practicing and feeling things on the back end. Because when you're scrolling through Instagram, TikTok, or you're watching a YouTube video, you don't get that. And so, there is a lot of lecture, and I help really simplify advanced movement topics. Where I think the hard is being able to apply this stuff readily. Know what it feels like to move your body in this way. Know what it is like to feel a squat. Know how, like, wow, I actually am not coaching the squat really well. I need to emphasize this. Knowing how to troubleshoot on the fly. Like, these are the things that you're going to get from this course. And it really is the foundation of how I approach coaching pretty much anyone, regardless of if I got someone who's a very advanced rehab case, who's very deconditioned, or someone who's performing at a high level. What I think most people gloss over is there are some fundamental skills and concepts that apply to almost every movement that we do, either as coaches or clinicians. And you're going to get not only how to do that, but a model that allows you to know when to do what. And I think by hammering a lot of these fundamental concepts as a coach or a clinician, on the back end, it makes your job that much easier because you're really teaching the same concepts to people over and over and over again. It's just a more challenging situation. So that could be, making sure that they've established the ability to generate appropriate amount of tension in the abdomen and get the lower rib cage to be as dynamic as possible, which I need that for a lot of moves. It could be to making sure that individuals can reach their arm without, crunching and feeling a lot of neck or tipping their torso backwards. Like, how do you do that? Because that not just applies to things that might improve shoulder mobility, but that's your overhead press. That's your landmine. That's a push-up. You're going to learn all that in this course, and it really gives you a broad spectrum foundation to apply across a wide variety of patients and clients, which I think ultimately allows you to help a broader audience than you already are.
Beautiful. So last thing I want to just touch on, as a business owner, I tell my staff all the time, we get paid for outcome, and we get paid, like what you said, to know when to do what. It's not, you can have 10,000 exercises, but you don't pair them correctly. You don't know when to progress them or regress them, that's where you lose people. And if you guys want to learn more, please come. You know, in November, I'm going to post it on my social media. You guys are going to get tons of email about it, especially for those who listen to this podcast. We'd love to meet some of you guys in person. I'm going to be hanging out afterwards. There'll be food, coffee. We're going to have a blast, man. We're all going to nerd out, maybe watch some UFC afterwards. So that's the whole goal, right? I want to make sure your trip to New Jersey is eventful. We'll get you some bagels, some pizza, whatever you want.
Nice. I better get some locks. That's right.
That's
not just the food, but also the rap group, which I like both. Which is, if you do want to sign up, ZacCupples.com. So that's ZACCUPPLES.com/seminars. And
Great.
Again, it's November 5th and 6th, 2022.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show note.
For it.
So, hey, Zac, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I know you're swamped. You're over there kicking ass in Vegas, And again, I can't wait to see you. We'd love to just chat in person. Again, guys, if you guys don't follow him, please go follow him. Sign up for the seminar. We'd love to meet all of you in person. We'll have a blast. Let's just kick it. Let's just talk about how great it is being a PT, get people to move. All the strength coaches there, I think would be great. We can bounce idea. I can feel the energy. I know it's gonna be a good weekend. Thank you for listening to the episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you find some value in this episode. Again, if you enjoyed, please share and likes and leave us 5-star review on the platform you're listening to, and let's get connected. I'll see you next time.